Hey everyone, welcome back to the top 10 dinosaur figures of 2020 video. 2020 was a pretty interesting year collecting. Things started off strong with Safari and CollectA releasing their figures early in the year. Then the pandemic hit and things slowed down for a bit because production slowed down and distribution was an absolute mess, but things ramped back up around the summertime. For the most part, it was a pretty solid year for the companies I review on the channel. It was pretty tough narrowing it down just to 10 figures. I think we got a lot of solid offerings, and all around, I think it was a great year for us dinosaur collectors. So before we jump into my list, let's just recap and see how everyone did this year. So let's start out with Safari. They're always the first out of the gate at the beginning of the year. They announce their figures in December, and they're usually out around January. They gave us a nice update to Edmontosaurus and a beautiful Pachycephalosaurus, and they also gave us a nice update to Deinonychus, a dinosaur species I feel like does not get enough attention from other companies. CollectA always seems to have a very solid offering every year. They always give us a lot of species that have never been made into figures before, and they're always pretty quick to turn around new discoveries like their Dinosaurus. But there's one thing that they're doing that I'm not a fan of this year. It seems like they're getting away from bases, and I'm just not a fan of how the theropods look now with those oversized feet and splayed toes. And unfortunately, it looks like that trend is continuing into the 2021 lineup. Rebor didn't do too much for me this year. I only picked up 2 figures from them, which is pretty rare for me. They seem to be concentrating more on pop culture stuff and like those alien hybrid dinosaurs. So those aren't really my cup of tea, and I was not too interested in them. But I did pick up their Titanoboa, which I was a huge fan of. I think it's a great toy, even though it's basically a rubber snake, which is now a complete pain in the ass to find. It's actually worth a pretty penny. And they released their Grab and Go T-Rex, which I was not a fan of. Figure kind of let me down, but 2021 is looking better for them. I am a huge fan of those retro dinosaurs that they're coming out, especially ones that are repainted after Primal Rage. I will definitely be picking those up. Moving on to Papo, the biggest thing they did this year was that Giganotosaurus, which received a lot of attention, most of it negative because of that retro pose. I did give this figure a lot of crap, but it has grown on me over the last few months, and I do enjoy taking pictures of it in stupid situations. But they did release a really cool Chilesaurus. Papo never really does obscure dinosaur species, so that figure was a welcome surprise. And does not look like we're getting any dinosaurs from them in 2021, which is kind of a shame. But my wallet will definitely enjoy the break. Hopefully they kind of redo that dinosaur line and just kind of get away from the awkward poses they've been putting their figures in the future. Moving on to Nanmu, I finally made my first couple Nanmu purchases last year. I picked up 2 dinosaurs that I thought were pretty accurate in my eyes. They're Allosaurus and their amazing Apatosaurus. We've barely gotten any sauropod figures in the last couple of years, so getting a large sauropod like this Apatosaurus was a must-have for my collection. I absolutely love that thing. And I'm pretty excited for their Giganotosaurus, which should be coming out, I think, in the next month or so. And moving on to the new kid on the block, GR Toys. They were the first ones out of the gate to give us an updated Spinosaurus with that paddle tail, and this is a great figure. It's a nice 135 scale, fits in good with my collection, and for their first figure, I was very impressed, and they have an amazing looking Ceratopsians that's coming out soon, which I do have on pre-order, so very excited to see what they do in the future. And right before Thanksgiving, Beast of the Mesozoic Wave 1 started shipping, and I absolutely love these figures. Just watch any of my reviews on them, I just basically drooled on these things for like 10-12 minutes for each review, and I absolutely love these figures, and Wave 2 should be shipping in a couple months, and we are getting the big boys, and I just cannot wait for those. And right at the end of the year, Vitae rose from the ashes, and they gave us a couple of new dinosaur species and re-released some of their older figures with updated paint schemes and bases. And I'm so happy that they're back. I feel like the quality of figures have improved since they've got resurrected, and I'm excited to see what they have in store for us in the future. And lastly, at the end of the year, PNSO rose their head and said, hey guys, remember us, and just absolutely dominated the dinosaur market from October till just about a couple weeks ago. They're taking a little bit of break because of Chinese New Year. And with their weekly releases, they quickly asserted themselves as the premier dinosaur figure company. And I've been blown away by their products with all these new releases. I feel like the quality of their figures has greatly improved since last year. So enough of recapping the year, let's jump into my top 10 list of 2020. Kicking the list off at number 10 is the Papo Chilesaurus. I feel like their Giganotosaurus overshadowed everything they did last year, and this Chilesaurus was a pleasant surprise from them. I'm always a fan of obscure dinosaur species getting made in the figure form. This figure is sculpted in a very dynamic pose, like most Papo figures. It looks like a snapshot of an animal in real life. The sculpted in detail are great on this figure. The paint job is really well done. Lives up to that high standard that most Papo figures are held to. And The only thing that's kind of weird on here is just those splayed out back legs of the figure, kind of like a Papo trademark now. And those front hands that are pronated really don't bother me. I actually went over why it doesn't bother me in the review of this figure. So all in all, a pretty good offering from Papo. Number 9, the CollectA Fukisaurus. Now, this was a tough one for me to narrow down. It was a toss-up between this figure and their Bottosaurus. I'm more partial to sauropods, but I feel like Ornithochaeans really get the short end of the stick when it comes to figures, except for Hadrosaurus. So it's nice to see that CollectA is giving Ornithochaeans some love, and I do really like this figure. It does have the typical CollectA war paint, but the natural looking paint scheme does kind of balance that out. And it's just a really nice looking Ornithochaean dinosaur, and I'm happy to see that CollectA is continuing to give us more Ornithochaeans in their 2021 lineup. Number 8, the Safari Limited Deinonychus. I was very excited for this figure when it was first announced. I feel like Deinonychus is always overshadowed by the popularity of Velociraptor, so it was great that Safari gave us a nice updated and accurate version of this dinosaur species, and I love the way it turned out. The feathering is beautifully done, has that nice fluffy looking coat, and it's all topped off by a very natural looking color scheme, and I just love the way the plumage looks along the tail, and those piercing red eyes are a nice touch. So yeah, this is definitely my quintessential Deinonychus for my collection, even though there's very, very few figures of this species. Number 7, the Vitae Genuine Pelta. I have to say, this was a surprise addition to my list. I kind of had the list already sorted out before I got this figure in, but once I got it in, I instantly fell in love with this. Just the quality of the materials, the painting and the detail, and that gorgeous looking base really gives this figure a very premium feel to it. And I think it's a great interpretation of an armored dinosaur. And this figure is just absolutely beautiful to behold in person. Just the detail and the paint wash on those armor plates give it a very lifelike look. And this figure is just really spectacular in my eyes. Number 6, the PNSO Spinosaurus. Now, the GR toy version was going to make it on the list, but once I got the PNSO version in, I much prefer the color scheme and proportions on this figure. The GR Toys one is a great figure. It's 135 scale. It actually scales with a lot of figures in my collection. And this figure is also 135 scale because it's based off the juvenile specimen. But PNSO has really outdone themselves this year. Just picking a couple figures to be in the top 10 list from them was such a tough choice. They gave us so many great figures this year, and the Spinosaurus is among the best of them. Number 5, the Safari Limited Pachycephalosaurus. I was really surprised by how much I liked this figure, but once I got it in hand, this is basically a perfect looking Pachycephalosaurus. They really nailed the wide chest cavity, hips, and tail base of this species. And the biggest selling point on this figure for me was the cranial lesion on its dome. I'm always a sucker for real life pathologies incorporated into figures, and this figure just turned out great and is really well done. A lot of nice scale detail and texturing on it, and I think the paint job turned out pretty great. Probably one of the better painted figures from Safari this year. Number 4, the Nanmu Apatosaurus. Now, even though this is based off the Jurassic World design, this is a pretty accurate looking representation of this species. I'm always a sucker for sauropod figures, and Apatosaurus is my favorite dinosaur of all time. And like I said earlier, we have barely gotten any sauropod figures the last couple of years. You know, we got this Apatosaurus from Nanmu. W Dragon did their Giraffe Titan, and CollectA gave us a Bottosaurus this year. But other than that, sauropods have been seriously lacking the last couple of years. So this guy was a very welcome addition to my collection, and I love the sheer size of this figure. Yes, it's a hollow figure, which definitely kept the cost down. But if they can keep producing sauropod figures this big and they're hollow, I'll keep buying them. Number 3, the PNSO Ceratosaurus. PNSO has really outdone themselves this year. They've given us so many great figures, and this Ceratosaurus is among one of the best of them. And it's actually my favorite Hadrosaur figure in my entire collection. This figure is truly beautiful in person. It's a large figure. It's beautifully sculpted and painted, and PNSO has gotten a lot better of making their in-hand figures look like their prototype images. And I just love the dynamic, lifelike pose this figure comes in. Just truly a work of art on this Ceratosaurus, and I just love the shiny coat over the head crest with that blue and red mixing in. Just an all-around fantastic figure. Number 2, every figure in the Beast of the Mesozoic Ceratopsians series Wave 1. I could not pick a favorite figure out of this lineup. I feel like if I did, it would be a disservice to every other figure in the line. I think they are all on the same level. The sculpting, detail, and paintwork is just fantastic across the board. I just love the articulation of this line. It does something a lot of other figure companies can't do. You have playability with these figures. It's just so much fun to pose them and display them on your shelf. Every figure can be in a unique position, and it just adds a lot of character to your collection. I am just completely in love with this line, and it's not even halfway done yet. Wave 2 should be coming out in a month or two, and the big boys are coming with that. I have no clue where I'm going to put those figures, and then when Wave 3 hits, my wife will probably leave me. And finally, number 1, this one should not come as a surprise, PNSO's Wilson the Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is the T-Rex figure I've been waiting years for my collection, and this figure did not disappoint. Finally, I have a big, chunky, muscular-looking T-Rex figure to display on my shelf, and it comes in a beautiful 1/35 scale, and just all around, this is just literally the perfect T-Rex figure. Yes, I know some people are hung up the lack of lips, but I can live with that. It does not bother me at all. I think it's going to be a very long time before this T-Rex figure is outdone. I just really don't see it being topped in the next few years. Just easily the best figure of 2020 in my opinion. And finally, here is a nice group shot of my top 10 figures of 2020. Now, remember, if you don't see your favorite figure on this list, that does not mean it's a bad figure. This list is just my opinion. So let me know in the comments what are your top 10 dinosaur figures of 2020. I'd love to hear what everyone's opinion is. So all in all, I think 2020 was a pretty great year for us collectors. I pretty much enjoyed almost every figure I picked up. And I gotta point out one quick thing on this Wilson figure. Let me just move this Styracosaurus. Look how good the balance is. That figure is only balancing on that front foot. That hind foot back there is floating in the air. Love the balance on this figure, but just definitely don't display it too long like that. It probably could warp. I actually displayed my figure with that little clear stand it came with. Going forward, it'll be interesting what 2021 brings us. I know PNSO still has a bunch of figures up their sleeves. You know, we have a very small offering from Safari. CollectA has a pretty decent offering coming up. Nanmu has some really cool figures in the works. I can't wait to see what Vitae has in store for us. And Papo is a no-show for 2021 unless they have something up their sleeves. Maybe the pandemic really messed up production for them. They're not going to announce some figures till late in the year. But the way it's looking, it doesn't look like they have any dinosaurs planned for us. So I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 video. I always enjoy doing these at the end of the year. So as always, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, show your support by hitting that subscription button just below the video. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously and it's greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys for the next one.